It's time for another exciting edition of the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle. Stay tuned as we discuss local and national sports from Southeast Missouri and beyond. And now, without further ado, let's get on with the show. The Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle is brought to you by Royal Retros. If you like cool throwback jerseys of defunct sports teams, Royal Retros is the place to buy. If you go to royalretros.com and you order with the code SPORTSDESK, all one word, you can get a little bit off your order. So check out Royal Retros. And now on with the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle.
And welcome to another edition of the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle. I'm Mike Bueller.
I'm Mark Sanders.
And I'm Kyle Roberts, awake this week.
And we have got another hopping show today. We're going to talk a little Cardinals. We're going to talk a little Kameron Misner. We're going to talk a little NBA playoffs. We're going to talk a little NHL playoffs. And, of course, we're going to talk a little bit of football. Before we get going, we had originally hoped to have a guest on this week, but our guest had a family situation come up that had to be taken care of. And we're hoping to have a guest on that sometime in the near future. We're actually hoping to have quite a few guests on this summer, so stay tuned for that because that could make for some really fun shows. But right now, we are going to lead off, and we're going to talk a little bit about the St. Louis Cardinals, who just defeated the former St. Louis Browns last night.
Yeah, it was a pretty remarkable past several days for the Cardinals. They did a very impressive sweep at home over the weekend of the Arizona Diamondbacks. In at least 2 and maybe 3 out of those games against Arizona, those were comeback wins, and those were all one-run victories. So really gutty, clutch baseball on the part of the Cardinals, taking that series sweep over Arizona. They had to fly out the very next day out to the East Coast to take on the Baltimore Orioles, and they dropped the first game of that series 5-2. But then they ended up winning the series by taking the next 2 games, and both of those games were come-from-behind victories. In both cases, they were blanked at one point by Baltimore. I believe they were down 4-0. In the Tuesday game, they were down 3-0. Last night, and they came back and won both of those games 7-4 and 6-4 respectively. Nice. So one of the things that we're seeing out of this young Cardinals team, at least young in terms of their fielders and their hitting, is that they don't get stressed out when they fall behind. Even if it's in the late innings, they have this belief that they can come back and beat anybody. And with Ryan Helsley set to close, if they can get a lead going into the 9th, they feel pretty good about where they are, and so far the results have shown that.
Indeed. Kyle, thoughts?
Yeah, you want to take a look at what the Cardinals are doing this year. And by the way, they start a 3-game weekend series tonight in a rematch of the 2011 iconic World Series with the Texas Rangers. First pitch at 7:05. The St. Louis Cardinals lead all of Major League Baseball in team batting average at 262. And they also lead all of baseball in on-base percentage at a 333 clip. That is so key. And the fact that we're getting guys on base, and one thing that separates good teams from bad teams is your ability to get them home. Drive your runners home with runners in scoring position, and the Cardinals are doing that in spades. Very, very impressive with how we move, with the way we move runners over. It's not big bopper baseball like we're watching Aaron Judge. The Cardinals are just doing it in a very fundamentally sound way, but also in a way that's fun to watch. And also from a defensive perspective, they're one of the best fielding teams in all of baseball.
Right.
And closing games out is an absolute must. And that's another thing that separates good teams from bad, is your ability to finish teams when you get them down going into the 9th, and you can get to your closer, which of course Ryan Helsley is one of the very best in all of baseball. But going tonight for the Cardinals will be Matthew Liberatore coming in. He's got a .500 record at 3-3, but an ERA of 2.73,
Yikes.
Which means maybe he's not getting the run support, but he's definitely been dealing on the mound in 59 and a third innings. He's struck out 51 batters and only walked 8.
Yeah, this
So
this
he's
is
dealing.
this is reflected in the fact that the Cardinals have gone 18-7 in the month of May. So 11 games over 500, and they've pushed their season record up to 32-24. So they are, if my math is right, 8 games over 500. They unfortunately still sit 3 games behind the Chicago Cubs in the National League Central. And you think, wow, what is going on with the Cubs? Well, I'd like to tell you what's going on with the Cubs. These are the last 6 series that the Cubs have played. The Colorado Rockies, oh, that was a sweep.
Hello.
The Cincinnati Reds, 2 out of 3. The Miami Marlins, 2 out of 3. The Chicago White Sox, 3-game sweep. The Miami Marlins, 2 out of 3. The Cubs haven't played a team with a winning record since they lost 2 out of 3 against the Mets, and before that, they lost 2 out of 3 against the San Francisco Giants. So the Cubs might be a paper tiger rather than a grizzly bear. We'll have to see later on in the season when they actually start playing teams that aren't 20 games below 500.
I will say this, however, and yes, to the young generation of Cardinals fans who were told to hate the Cubs, I've never been that guy. Pete Crow Armstrong is an absolute unit.
No
Chicago
denying that.
Cubs.
No. You still have to play baseball, But right now, the Cubs are doing what a good team is supposed to do, and that is
They're being the
feasting.
teams they're supposed to.
Yeah, it's feasting on inferior competition. But eventually this will take care of itself. Just looking ahead, the Cards and the Cubs won't meet again until the beginning of the last week in June. So they've got a 4-game series at home against the Cubs beginning on Monday, June 23rd. And then they've got 3-game series against Cleveland and Pittsburgh, followed by another 3 at the Cubs. So before we get to the All-Star break, we'll have 7 more head-to-head games against the Cubs, and I think that's going to tell us a lot when we get there. But there's a lot to be encouraged about concerning the Cardinals. They have typically been, over their history, a warm weather team. They've in their championship years, they've been much better in the second half of the season, the dog days of the summer, and especially making that push for the playoffs. So the fact that they're playing really good ball in the first half of the season, I think historically that bodes well for what we can look at the rest of the summertime.
I completely agree. And I was always, growing up, I'd always just remember the Cardinals really picking things up in June and being more often than not slow starters. But once the warm weather really kicked in and the team was playing well, then they'd really get cooking. And when all else fails, you're not a fan of the Colorado Rockies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Guys, I want to share kind of a quick aside. Kyle was talking about, not being, a Cub hater like a lot of Cardinals fans are. I'm kind of the same way, because when I started rooting for the Cardinals back in the 1980s, our biggest rival was not the Chicago Cubs. It was, and Mark, you know this one, the
Mets or Palm Scum. Mets or Palm Scum.
Yes, the Mets if you were a Cardinals fan in the mid to late 1980s, the New York Mets were the J.R. Ewing of baseball.
Palm Scum, yeah.
Now, and for reference, the team I grew up disliking simply because it was more of a competitive issue was the Astros, and when they were in the National League Central, simply because they were the team we had to go through to win the Central.
Yeah.
And I always say the Cubs and Cardinals are the inverse of Red Sox, Yankees, Mets, Braves, Giants, Dodgers. Have you ever once seen the Cardinals and Cubs get in a bench-clearing brawl? No. I can't recall.
No, only in the stands.
I've never seen that either, but I don't doubt it. I've been around some douchey Cubs fans that had very punchable faces. Was the last time I went to a ball game, but that's the difference. I remember watching Sunday Night Baseball growing up, and John Miller and Joe Morgan would always say that the Cardinals and Cubs have the friendliest rivalry in all of baseball.
Yeah, it's
I wholeheartedly hold to that.
Yeah, going to a Cubs game is a completely different experience than, say, going to like a Bears game as a fan of their opponents. Bears fans are vicious and scary. Cubs fans are just loud and obnoxious.
Yeah, get a few beers in them, and you really see the IQ points drop. Which, sad, I do have a few friends who are Cubs fans, but still, it's just not the same. But the Cardinals are playing well above expectation, and I've always felt a lot of it came down to just making fundamental changes to how we approach the plate this year.
Yeah, well, and we've got a new hitting
smaller
coach,
ball, we help out our pitching staff more.
Yeah, absolutely. Taking a deeper dive into the standings, the Cardinals have pulled into a tie for the second of 3 wild card spots in the postseason. The Mets currently hold the first position, and they're 2 games up on the Padres and the Cardinals, who have slightly different records, but it looks like the Cardinals have played 2 more games than the Padres. So they're essentially tied for that second and third spot, with the Giants a game behind. And so, the Cardinals have an opportunity here in the first half of the season to start to put some distance between them and the other contenders in the National League. And then that's going to raise the very important question as we come to the end of July and the Major League Baseball trade deadline. About what do the Cardinals do. I think you're definitely not sellers if you are serious. If you hold a wild card spot, or if you're within a game or 2 of the wild card spot, you're not going to be sellers. And the question is, how do you spend that money if you decide to be buyers, and what do you actually need? Another big bat, that's always useful. More relief pitching, that's always crucial. We know that we don't have that yet in the minor leagues, and we certainly don't want to give up the few prospects that we have at this point. So it raises
I wouldn't want
kind
to
of
sacrifice our farm system right now.
No, because the whole point of this season was building our farm system back up. So maybe they just stand pat and say, you know what, this is the team we started with, this is the team we're going to finish with, and see what happens.
I respect that as long as management makes it very clear to the fans what the direction and the framework of the ball club is going forward, so everybody can get on board.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the other thing to look forward to is that we're finally going to yeet John Mozeliak out of the president's office after this season, and it would be interesting to know, whether he is, to what extent he has taken his hands off the team this season and let Kyle Bloom run the team from the VP's office.
I'm very much ready for for us to move on from Mo and get a new direction and a new vision.
Yeah. Mike, why don't you tell us how Poplar Bluff's own Kameron Misner is doing down in Tampa Bay with the Rays?
Last night, let me pull his numbers up real quick. Actually, my app doesn't want to load because my phone's being a jerk.
Well, while you're looking for that,
Kameron
I will
Misner,
say,
I think went 0-for-2 last night, but he had a walk, and that's one thing that I've noticed of late is that even in games when Misner is not, getting hits, he is still reaching base safely because he's drawing walks. That says to me he's getting more patient at the plate. And throughout his baseball career, one of his strengths has always been his ability to get on base, even when he's not putting the bat on the ball. And that's a good sign. I was on baseballreference.com recently. His WAR, his wins above replacement rating, is still pretty solid. He's playing great defense. I think he's got last time I checked, like a .991 fielding percentage. I think he's made like one error the entire season in the outfield. He's thrown out a couple of guys on the base paths from the outfield. So, even when he's not getting the hits, he's still contributing, which is why he's still in the starting lineup, I believe.
Right. And looking at the standings, the Rays have moved up in the standings. They're currently sitting one game above 500. That's 7 games behind the Yankees in the American League East, but it is good enough for second place. And then looking at the AL wildcard race, they are just 2 games back of the Minnesota Twins, who are currently sitting in that third spot. So they're definitely very much in the conversation as far as the playoffs in the American League. And it would be hard to see Cameron having a much worse month in June than he did in May in terms of batting average. He's well below 200 with his month of May batting average. But if he could just get back to somewhere in between how he played in May and how he started off the season in April, I think that we can definitely look for him to be on an upswing with that hitting. So let's hope his bat heats back up as the weather does down in Florida.
And that's one thing that's been kind of one of Misner's hallmarks throughout his professional career is he has traditionally started really slow. I mean, there's been a couple of minor league seasons he was struggling, coming out of May, he was struggling to get over the Mendoza line. And then when the weather got hot, so did his bat. And if that happens again this year, he's going to have a really nice year, especially considering that he's still got a solid average. He's hitting, I think, in the low to mid 230s right now for the season. And, if he can get hot, he can still, put up some even better stuff than he's already done.
Yeah, something to look forward to as the weather gets hotter. Something else that we want to bring to your attention today, friend of the podcast and Poplar Bluff native Lee James Gladney is the president of the Washington, D.C., Maryland chapter of the Southeast Missouri Civic and Social Club. And their 56th annual Poplar Bluff Day is coming up here in Poplar Bluff from July 3rd to July 5th. It is a 3-day event that's going to feature a mixer on July 3rd at the AAD Grotto, a picnic followed by game night on the 4th of July at the historic Wheatley School, and then on July 5th, a dance back at the AAD Grotto. Sports legend Eddie Moss is going to be the keynote speaker at one of these events. I need to clarify which one of those is going to be, but Eddie Moss is going to be here. If you don't recognize Lee James Gladney, his younger brother was Jimmy Gladney, who was the, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, first recipient of the Bus Car Award, or at least I know he was one of the recipients of the Bus Car Award for the outstanding high school football player in Southeast Missouri. And I believe we've mentioned this on the podcast before. Mr. Gladney has a fairly famous grandson. His name is Jordan Addison, star wide receiver for the Minnesota Vikings. So that should be a really great event. Anyone who's interested in registering for this event, you can get more information. You can email Mr. Gladney. It's a simple email address to remember. It's LJ Gladney, GLADNEY, @gmail.com, and he'll be happy to provide you with information on that event. So something to look forward to here on 4th of July weekend.
Indeed, that sounds pretty legit.
All right, we're going to turn our attention to postseason basketball next. Unfortunately, the conference finals have been underwhelming, to say the least. Oklahoma City just rolled over like a tornado. Too soon? They destroyed the Timberwolves in 5 games. The T-Wolves managed 1 win in that series, but OKC just won going away, proving that SGA absolutely deserved that MVP award. And then Indiana looks like they are on the verge of closing out the New York Knicks, and therefore continuing decades of misery for Knicks fans. Kyle, your thoughts on the upcoming NBA championship between Oklahoma City and Indiana?
Well, what this will provided that the Pacers go ahead and close MSG down for the summer, is this will be the 7th consecutive NBA Finals without a repeat championship possibility.
Well, and in this case, if it is Indiana, it would be two teams who've never won a championship.
Absolutely. Now, it's confused. It's always, a little bit unique considering the Thunder are originally the Seattle Supersonics, who have an NBA championship, but the way their canonical history is structured, all the Sonics' history stays in Seattle. The Thunder have not won a championship. The Pacers have won 3 ABA championships, but only appeared in 1 NBA Finals, and that was in 2000. If for those who are big on, it's got to be big market teams, well, be mad, because Indianapolis and Oklahoma City is the smallest market in the NBA. It's like Green Bay, but it doesn't matter. Their fans, these fan bases are extremely rabid. And as I was talking to my boss this morning, who is a Celtics fan, and his wife is a Timberwolves fan, that the state of Indiana, when it comes to basketball, is as rabid about high school basketball and the Pacers as high school football is in Texas.
Oh, that's saying a lot.
It will absolutely mean everything. Now, if that's the series we get, I'm taking Indiana for one reason. Other than Tyrese Halliburton is going to absolutely show his ass. He is criminally underrated, even though he has destroyed New York in the series. In game 1, Halliburton hit everyone thought was a buzzer-beating 3 that hit the back of the rim and went in. Turns out it was a 2. But the way that he did the choke sign and looked over at Reggie Miller, who was on commentary for TNT, how fitting in the Garden, and Reggie, the way he pointed back at him.
Oh, my God.
This is so important for this team to win the NBA championship, for that man who fought for over 15 years to bring that city a championship and came so close so many times.
Let me play devil's advocate here. The Timberwolves eliminated the Lakers in 5 games. Then they rolled over the Golden State Warriors. Granted, Steph Curry didn't play most of those games. They rolled over the Warriors, however, in 5 games, and then they were barely able to hold serve against Oklahoma City. I know that Halliburton has played heroically against the Knicks, but I think SGA and the team that the Thunder is going to put on the court, I have a hard time seeing Indiana match up with them over a 7-game series.
I'll completely give you that, and the Thunder's length and their ability to turn defense into offense is borderline unfair. However, I just feel something very special. I don't have a connection to the Thunder the way that I did growing up with the Pacers and all of those guys, because I saw them fall short so many times, whether it was Reggie and Rick Smits or Jermaine O'Neal or Paul George, Roy Hibbert, those days about a decade ago, going against the Heatles and LeBron in Miami. They're the close but never finishes the job. They are the bridesmaids of the NBA playoffs in my lifetime.
Yeah, they're like the Vikings and the Bills, just never made it to the top of the mountain.
Exactly, and there's just something different. This isn't just for, these guys. It is for Reggie. It is for Jermaine O'Neal. It is for the Rick Smiths of the world, the Mel Daniels and the Mark Jacksons and, the Davis brothers. And Larry Bird coached them. Yeah. Coached them to their only finals appearance in 2000. This is for Larry. Yeah, he's got 3 rings, but being a part of the organization in his home state, there's just something different I feel about it. Now, when you line up body to body, and also the way that they bodied Minnesota is more of an indictment on the Timberwolves not getting Anthony Edwards a second scoring option. Your second best player in 2025 cannot be Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert is as mobile as 40-year-old Dikembe Mutombo, God rest his soul.
Yeah.
In today's NBA, that don't fly. You got to be able to move and rotate. And that dude has concrete for feet. But I wouldn't be surprised if this series goes 7. I really wouldn't. If OKC wins, I'm not shocked, but I just might cry if the Pacers get to hand the Larry O'Brien Trophy to Reggie Miller.
Yeah, I think
that would be so cool.
Yeah, I think a seven game series in which most of those games are really close would be exciting, especially for less than casual basketball fans like myself, who mainly only tune in or pay attention to like the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter of the finals.
This could rope a lot of folks in outside of these, because the Thunder and Pacers have more of a local feel to them. Like, these are our guys, which I just love. And you'll go to the death for your guys, and larger audiences will now see that, and then they'll be able to feel why it matters.
And I'll tell you something else. I really hate the whole Colin Cowherd coastal narrative that if it's not a big team from a big city on one of the country's two coasts, that the rest of the country just doesn't care about it. That's ridiculous. I mean, it's like if teams in the Midwest and the South and other regions that aren't New York and California, if those teams don't matter, then why bother even having franchises?
Thank you. Thank you. You don't treat these franchises like jobbers. Like the way that's how people looked at Milwaukee, even with Giannis. Historically, the Bucks are not an also-ran franchise. I'm sorry, you ever heard of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar? Stuff like that. They'll look at the city and immediately dismiss. The same with the T-Wolves. Now, granted, they don't have a long stretch of winning, but still, the Bucks are a bad example of saying small market. Not only do you have a superstar, well, he may not be playing there much longer, but there's a winning history in the past. It'd be the same with the Portland Trailblazers. Sure, they're isolated all the way in the Pacific Northwest, but they have a winning history. It's so disrespectful.
Yeah.
And that's why I never take into consideration anything Colin Cowherd says. The same guy who once said that Lamar Jackson isn't quarterbacky enough, and I'm just waiting for him to still explain what quarterbacky means. Go on.
Oh, he's gonna explain it on the air about halfway through the football season when J.J. McCarthy is lighting up opposing defenses, and he has to come back and admit how wrong he was. He's
not good at that.
Well, I'm going to insist upon it. Like that.
Thoroughly, and you also have receipts for what we're about to get into. Speaking of J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah, that's a nice little preview, but I do want to just say one quick word about the Stanley Cup playoffs before we move on
by all means.
To my latest NFL rant. The Florida Panthers dispatched of the Carolina Hurricanes with a 4-1 series winning that decisive game by a score of 5-3. My prediction from last week that the Stars were going to have an easy time with Edmonton turned out to be an ice cold take. The Oilers are currently up 3-1, and Connor Jesus Christ McDavid is proving why he is the best player in hockey for the Edmonton Oilers in this series.
He won the Conn Smythe last year in defeat as the playoff MVP in defeat.
Yeah. Yeah,
he's only the second player to win the Conn Smythe, which for the uninitiated, it goes to the most valuable player of the Stanley Cup playoffs. The other being goalie Jean-Sebastian Giguère for the then Mighty Ducks of Anaheim in 2003. There's a reason we were calling Connor McDavid McJesus, but we also can't discount the improved depth of the Oilers in terms of scoring, because they've always had an issue with scoring depth from guys other than Connor and Leon Draisaitl, who led the league in goals this year, getting contributions from Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Zach Hyman, who is Shaq's favorite hockey player, and improved goaltending from Stuart Skinner. Dallas, for as deep as they are, they do not have that go-to, oh my God, firepower. It's just right now they're overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And if Edmonton wins, we're going to get a rematch of last year's finals, which was decided by a goal in Game 7. And again, if I ever have blood pressure issues later in life, you'll know why.
And we're also going to have friend of the podcast Mike Tucker on with us next week to give us a preview of that NHL finals.
Dang right. I'm looking forward to that.
Okay. Not a whole lot going on in the NFL this week. The Vikings are doing their OTA practices, and on their second day of OTAs, they let the media come and watch J.J. McCarthy in shorts and a T-shirt throw passes to Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson appears at OTAs. That is a great sign. Yeah, that's a great sign. There's a lot of optimism in Vikings land about what this team could do. Unfortunately, or maybe this is fortunately, because I think that head coach Kevin O'Connell really feeds off of the disrespect that the Vikings get from the national media. The NFL FPI rankings came out from ESPN Analytics. No surprise, the top 3 teams in their preseason rankings are the Eagles, the Chiefs, and the Ravens. The Vikings disrespect continues, placing the Vikings at 15, just one spot above the Bears. And following the Bears are some absolutely atrocious teams. The Steelers, all respect to Mike Tomlin, but the Steelers don't have a professional quarterback on their roster. And don't come back at me with Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph is a QB3 at best. The Cowboys follow the Steelers. The Cowboys have been living off of their reputation for 30 years now.
And they have no running game.
No.
And another lame duck coach.
No. And
They're still America's team, guys.
Yeah.
Well, that says everything about it, don't you think?
Yeah.
Wink, wink.
Let's take a look at who is ahead of the Vikings behind that number 3 spot. The Lions are ranked 4th. Now, again, the Lions have 2 terrific seasons in which they almost got to the top of the mountain, but almost doesn't count in football. And they have lost their offensive coordinator and their defensive coordinator, and they're playing, I believe it's the 2nd or 3rd toughest schedule in the NFL next season. So there is a real chance that the Lions regress. I'm not saying that they won't make the playoffs or anything, but I don't think there's a world in which we can expect Detroit to win 15 games this season. I just don't see that happening. Bills and Commanders are 5 and 6. I can see that. They've got the Bengals ranked 7th. I'll tell you what, the man crush.
The who? The who?
The Bungles. You know, that team that only plays one side of the ball. I understand that these sports writers have an enormous man crush on Joe Cool, a.k.a. Joe Burrows. Now, sure, Burrows is a great quarterback, but it's not like he's Travis Hunter. He can't come off the field on offense and then go play cornerback or go play middle linebacker.
I was about to ask, can he play middle linebacker for the Bengals here?
Yeah. I mean, it's like, you know, they're gonna have to score 40 points a game just to have a chance with that terrible defense. Look at their free agent signings. Look at their draft picks. They did nothing to improve their defense. So the Bengals at 7 is just ridiculous. The Packers are at 8. You want to talk about a small market team?
That's a stretch.
Yeah, a small market team that has been living on reputation for their entire existence. The Vikings beat the Packers twice last season. The Vikings significantly improved their offense and their defense. What did the Packers do? They overpaid for a guard from San Francisco, and they drafted a small but fast, but small and skinny wide receiver out of Texas. So how you can rank the Packers 7 spots above? And don't come at me with Jordan Love. Jordan Love is mid. he's mid. He can throw 4 touchdowns. He can throw 4 touchdowns in a game, and he can also throw 4 picks in a game. I mean, it's like
that sounds like he graduated from the famous Turnover Factory School.
I mean, he is literally the quarterback version of Forrest Gump's box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. In an act of utter disrespect that ought to outrage you, Kyle, the Chargers are ranked 9th, 1 spot ahead of the LA Rams. You know, the Chargers, who went out to a severely disabled Texans team in the first round of the playoffs over the Rams, who were 1 offensive drive away from beating the Eagles in the snow on the road. Are you kidding me?
And I'm always going to take my head coach over Michigan, man.
Yeah.
Always. What are we doing here?
I don't know. The most bizarre ranking in here is the San Francisco 49ers at number 11. That team literally had a garage sale in the back of Levi Stadium this season. They let so many players walk so that they could pay Brock Purdy, who is a fine mid-level quarterback, $53 million a year.
Only because the market says so, and I love Brock Purdy, but the market says that's what he's worth. That's what it would have cost to keep him. Is that his actual worth? Of course it isn't. And again, as you said, a fire sale. However, I also see the counterplay, and I should not be giving any solace to the 49ers. I am a Rams fan. That's against Rams law. However, being the logical football fan, a lot of what happened last year can be seen as an outlier due to the amount of injuries that the 49ers suffered on both sides of the ball. I get it. But here's a problem. No Deebo Samuel. I know he was phased out of the offense, but still, that's a key cog to your offense. You don't have Christian Hufanga. You lost him to the Broncos on defense. You don't have Dre Greenlaw. You lost him on defense to the Denver Broncos. By the way, did you know the Denver Broncos led the NFL in sacks and have the reigning defensive player of the year? And you have an injury-prone Christian McCaffrey who, God bless him, has struggled to stay consistently healthy and on the field. Mm-hmm. And Kyle Shanahan is not a clutch head coach. That's not the 11th best team in the National Football League as of this day.
No, absolutely not. Following the 49ers, Broncos, Texans, Buccaneers, I would put the Vikings on the field against all 3 of those teams right now and bet on the Vikings. Today, with the lineups that they have, the Vikings beat all 3 of those teams.
You're returning. Like, how much of last year's starters are you returning?
Everybody, and plus we completely revamped the trenches, and we've got 2 interior pass rushers with a proven record of pressuring and sacking quarterbacks, and then we have at right guard Pro Bowl Will Fries, Ryan Kelly, our new center, and first-round draft pick Donovan Jackson. Filling the hole at left guard, plus 2 of the best tackles in the NFL, in Christian Darrisaw and Brian O'Neill. You know, it's a top 5 offensive line before the season even starts.
So what this sounds like to me is not an overall analysis of your football team and the moves you made in the offseason, the players you drafted, and who you brought in and so on and so forth. This sounds like a quarterback analysis to me.
It's absolutely what it is. Now, here's how I would rank the top of these rankings, just going on full roster and what happened last season. And I'm only going to go down to where I would put the Vikings. If you don't hear a team, you can assume that I'm ranking them lower than the Vikings. Number 1 is the Eagles. That's obvious. Number 2 team is the Bills. I think the Bills should be ranked second. The Ravens, I'm putting the Chiefs at number 4. That team isn't getting any younger, and that's the problem with the Chiefs. You know, I love Travis Kelce. I mean, he's one of my favorite players of all time, even before he started dating Taylor Swift. Kelce was one of my favorites, but he's just too old. I mean, I can't see that he's going to be that much of a difference maker for the team. That team needs to get younger in a hurry.
Quickly.
And I think really, if they end up as a wild card, which I figure they will, even if they manage to eke out another division winner, I don't see them going back to the Super Bowl this season. And I would really expect that after this season ends for the Chiefs, that you're going to see a pretty dramatic rebuild.
Here's an extreme take. Now, I'm not saying this will happen, but I would not be surprised if it did. Hold on to your butt.
Oh,
Worst
I hear a hot
case
take
scenario, the
coming.
Kansas City Chiefs missed the playoffs this year.
Ooh, that's a red hot take.
Listen, here's why. All of those wins by nonsense and magic fairy dust they borrowed from the Cardinals last year, number one. Number two, the Chargers allowed the fewest points in the league last year. And now, if we're a team with a strong running game and a committed identity, they just added Najee Harris.
Oh, and don't forget rookie Omarion Hampton.
Omarion Hampton. Yeah. Just because, why not? We are going to kill you at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
The Denver Broncos, and a lot of it does come down to Bo Nix's development and the improvement of the offense. But the best player of the year at cornerback, Dion. And you just add Christian
Kyle, you're breaking up. You might want to turn your head a little bit, see if you can adjust your phone.
Oh, my apologies.
Oh, loud and clear.
The Broncos and the Chargers have made leaps and bounds improvements, and they were playoff teams last year.
Yeah.
KC has the sixth toughest schedule going into the year.
And
it's not impossible to fathom this team misses the playoffs.
Yeah, don't sleep on Las Vegas. Pete Carroll is a coach who knows how to win. He's got a quarterback who he knows in Geno Smith. He knows Geno's capabilities. And the Raiders had a fantastic draft. They drafted so much talent.
That's very odd to say.
I know. But, I mean, I don't think that the Raiders are going to actually make the playoffs. But no. I think they're good for at least 7, 8, maybe even 9 wins this season. I haven't taken a close look at their schedule, but the Raiders are not going to be the cupcake pushovers that they've been for the past several years.
No, now granted, their wide receiver room is the worst in the NFL, but they have Brock Bowers to grow their passing game around. And if there's one thing we know about Pete Carroll, with the exception of being at the goal line of the Super Bowl, he loves to run the football with one feature back. And Ashton Jeanty is a shorter Marshawn Lynch. I compare him a little bit more to Maurice Jones-Drew, but both guys had similar running styles. And Ashton Jeanty's going to get every opportunity to showcase why he went as high as he did. But that's my hot take. But I don't think it's not impossible to fathom.
No,
I wouldn't say it if I didn't believe it was a possibility of certain of the ball bouncing. Let's say Isaiah Likely's foot or his toe stays in bounds, or the Bengals don't lose their game on something fugazi, or the Broncos don't get that field goal block. Chiefs are a wild card team.
Yeah, or
I don't go by your record. I go by what I see.
Yeah, or that tight end sees that desperation ball from why do I always blank when I'm on the air? Who's the Bills quarterback? I can't think of his name.
Josh Allen.
Josh Allen's desperation pass. You know, if that tight end looks up half a second sooner and spots that ball and catches it, the Bills win that game and they go to the Super Bowl.
You see what I mean? Optics, not record.
Yeah, let me finish out. Let me finish out my top 10 here.
Oh, yeah.
So we ended with the Chiefs at 4. I'll put the Commanders at 5 because, again, you mentioned Deebo Samuel. He plays for the Commanders this season.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to drop the Lions down too much. I think the Lions are at 6. The Rams I would put up at 7. I'm plugging the Vikings in at 8. That's where they belong. And then I'll round out the top 10 with the Chargers and the Packers. I think the Packers did have a pretty good season. They did go to the playoffs. I think they deserve to be in the top 10. After that, if you want to throw in Broncos, Buccaneers, Texans, that's fine. I'm dropping 49ers down into the 20s.
They're not a playoff team.
I'm also putting the Steelers. Yeah, I'm also putting the Steelers and the Cowboys down there. I'll even move the Bears up to about 13 or 14.
The Steelers are a bottom 8 team because they don't have this thing called a quarterback.
Yeah.
And for the Bears, as you mentioned, I don't know if this goes against the unwritten rules of football. I don't know if this is even allowed, but Caleb Williams might be the first 4K 30-touchdown Bears quarterback because there are now too many weapons for him to fail.
Well, and they finally have a coach who knows what he's doing with the offense there. There's no way that the Bears offense is going to be worse than they were last season. I mean, Ben Johnson, if he doesn't do anything else, that offense is going to be vastly improved.
Ben Johnson saved Jared Goff's career in Detroit. And let's be honest, the Bears have a better wide receiver room than the Lions do.
Yeah. One last glance at the bottom of these ESPN analytics, and I don't know who these people are who come up with this stuff. They've got the Panthers at 28. The Panthers are going to be better than that. The Panthers are going to have a top 20 season. The Panthers are going to be very improved. They've got the Titans at 31. Again, just like I said with the Bears, there's no way that the Titans' offense isn't better, significantly better than they were last season. There's no way.
They almost have no choice but to be.
Yeah, there's no way that Cam Ward is going to play worse than Will Levis. It's not going to happen. It's just ridiculous. And then the Raiders, they have the Raiders at 24. Again, I think the Raiders are going to be a top 20 team. So anyway, it's a lot of times, you know what it is. We've spent about 15 minutes talking about something that ESPN published. So mission accomplished. They got the publicity nationwide that they wanted. But, where else are you going to go online for sports news? The Sporting News is a shell of its former reputation. Sports Illustrated is run by AI bots. I mean, where are you going to go for sports news online?
You can always go to the sports desk.
Absolutely. See, we didn't even rehearse that, and you got it.
I'm saying all this in bed. All right.
Hey, before we close out today, Mike's got some interesting news about Southeast Missouri high school baseball. Mike, take it away and then close us out.
Yeah, we are wrapping up the high school baseball and softball seasons here in Missouri. The Chaffee Red Devils are headed to the Final Four after getting a 13-0 win at Bernie yesterday afternoon. The day before that, Bernie dispatched Van Buren 7-5 in a 9-inning thriller. And another really legit game that happened Tuesday is the Greenville Bears, who won the Class 3 District 2 championship and also won at SEMO Conference regular season champion Poplar Bluff last month. Greenville Bears took on Portageville in the Class 3 sectional, and Portageville pitcher Houston Parton threw one of the best games in Southeast Missouri in recent memory when he not only no-hit the Bears, but he struck out 19 batters in 7 innings and only faced one batter over the minimum. And he didn't do this to some team that was coming in 3-20. He did this to a district champion that beat the SEMO Conference champion on its home field. So I don't know how many radars Mr. Parton was on before that game, but I think he's on a few now.
I would say so, absolutely.
Yeah, and also too, speaking of Bernie, the Bernie Lady Mules went out to the state tournament in Springfield in softball. They took fourth, lost to Oak Ridge 3-2 in 8 innings in the third place game. So, and that's 2 Southeast Missouri teams, and another Southeast Missouri team that played out there was Kennett. Kennett also got third, wrapping up, a great career for their pitcher, Hanley McAtee, who is going to play at Northwest Mississippi Community College next season, which is kind of cool because her dad, former Tenant baseball coach Bart McAtee, also played baseball there back in the 1980s.
Terrific. Hey, I want to do one last shout out. One of the many things that I do here at Three Rivers College is I am the coordinator of the Three Rivers Spelling Bee, and our champion each year goes to Washington, D.C. to compete in the Scripps National Spelling Bee. So I want to give a shout out to Scott Tingle from Zenith Hornersville Middle School, and he finished tied for 100th place, made it through the first 2 rounds, and then was eliminated with about 80 other spellers in the 3rd round. But he availed himself well at the National Spelling Bee, and those of you who are interested in watching young people spell words that you would have sworn were not part of the English language, the finals are on TV tonight. I believe it begins 7 Central Time on the ION, that's ION, the ION cable network, and I think that there are also some online options for those of you who don't have cable and satellite. So shout out to the spellers. We're going to have a new National Spelling Bee champion tonight.
Oh, and by the way, speaking of ION television, if you live in Southeast Missouri, you can get that on, if you live in Poplar Bluff, channel 15.5. And if you live a little closer to Illinois, you can get it on channel 3.5. So you actually, if you live in this area and you live in the right part of this area, you do not have to have cable to get it. You can actually get it with an antenna.
Yeah, terrific. An antenna. I'll give $5 to anyone under 20 years old who can show me an example of an antenna.
And that's kind of surprising because in this era of cord cutting, that's how in so many places you can get your local channels for absolutely free. You don't need a streaming service. You don't need cable. You need an antenna, and it's a one-time cost.
Oh, terrific. Well, thank you for the tech support advice.
Hey, that's what I'm here for, guys. But on that note, we're going to wrap the show up for this week. I'm Mike Bueller.
I'm Mark Sanders.
And this is Kyle Roberts.
And you have been listening to the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle.